Alright, welcome back to How to Build an Ocean Liner in Minecraft. This is part 2, and today we're going to be working on the sculpting for the hull, for the bow. I might split it into two parts, we'll see. Sorry this took so long. I had to figure out how I wanted to record this. I'm thinking I'm going to record this in the form of a time-lapse with voiceovers, because it would be very hard to explain just building it. So that out of the way, we'll just jump right into a time lapse, I guess. Alright, so welcome to the time lapse. So first things first is I want to explain what we're going to be doing here, or kind of the shape we're going to be producing, rather. What we want to do is start out with this shallow shape you see me trying to make here, and as you go back on each section, you want it to get more and more curved and pronounced. And then towards the very back sections, you want it to start shallowing out again. So you'll see me attempt to do this here in this time lapse. So here, I'm just building the shape. You can see it's getting more and more angled as I go back. So I'm fixing the bottom here. And I'm on the fourth row, right? Third row. Unless you count the first one, then it's fourth. And you can see I'm making it more and more angled, and eventually at the top we're gonna have a sort of, it's gonna angle even steeper at the top. Right now it's a pretty straight angle, but that's gonna change. I'm fixing the bottom and making it look better. So now's the time to do this. I like to look at each row compared to the last one and make changes as necessary. It's all trial and error. So you can see I'm figuring out how I want to do this. I should have edited this part a little bit, but oh well. So, fifth row, or sixth, I can't count. I'm coming out to get a view of it so I could see what I'm doing. And yeah, if I don't commentate on parts, I'm sorry. Sometimes there's just parts not to commentate on. Also, if you like, for these time lapses, I can do shaders as well. If you want the time lapse to look a bit nicer for some reason, I'll let that up to you. So you see near the top now in the white section how I have the rows curving out more. And then they go pretty flat, and then they curve back in at the bottom. Almost like an S shape, or a backwards S shape a little bit, but not quite. And now you can see I put the yellow down for the shear. And the curve is getting more and more pronounced as I go back. Eventually we're going to start with 2s at the top, but we're not there yet. Rows of 2, we're not quite there yet. So here I am trying to finish the bottom, and the bottom is typically the hardest part to make line up because it's so easy to make it too long. I might have here, I think I'm on the limit. Right now it looks good, but as I go back I think I make it too long, but we will see. I'll show you when we get there. So I'm using World Edit here to move the part back to try to figure out where I want it. So you can see I keep moving it, and I added another row of 2. Like I said, World Edit makes this so much easier. If you don't have World Edit, this is a possible thing. I have built ships bigger than this in the past without it, and I do recommend doing it at least once, but I've done it a few times. And after you use World Edit, there's just no going back. Shipbuilding's a nightmare without World Edit, but it can be done, and it's a lot more impressive when it is done without World Edit too. But that's up to you. So if you're playing the Bedrock Edition, you can't use World Edit. You could still use the commands like the fill command and stuff. That always helps. So you see that curve is getting more and more pronounced. You can see it touches at the top now, though. That's due to the shear. That's fine. You won't notice that when this is all filled in the end, which I will show you how to do maybe next episode when we start filling things in. But yeah, so now this is where the first problems start. I've been getting these sort of graphical errors in the time-lapse where stuff hasn't been rendering in properly. So it looks like my row there just stops and then starts again on the bottom, but the row is there, but this screen's not rendering it. This will become a problem later. So here you can see the shape of the bow starting to form, and now we are continuing on back. So again, with that more pronounced curve, and you can see where the first row of 2 started at the top. Now, a big mistake I see people make is at the forecastle deck at the very top, they'll have the 2 start at the top of the forecastle, but the forecastle shallows out again. So you can see how it gets, from the bottom, it kind of curves up and then goes on an angle, and then it goes into a row of 2 angles, so like a steeper angle, and then it shallows out on the white forecastle there. That's something I see a lot of people miss, and they'll just have the steep row with 2 go up to the forecastle, and it's not that big of a deal, but yeah. And this is where the graphical error comes in. You can see where it looks like there's a missing block. That's going to become a big problem here shortly, so you're just going to have to guess. I use World Edit here to make it white so I can see, and most importantly so you can see. You don't need World Edit to change the color of blocks. You can use the /fill command to do replace, and there's a number. You have to know the color IDs to do it. I think black's 15. I might be wrong on that, but you need the color IDs. So you can see where the graphical errors come into play here down at the start of the anti-fouling red section. You got the just looks like I missed a bunch of blocks when in fact they are there. My player, when I was building it there, can see it. If I was smart, I would have recorded a player POV too to prove that. But I'm not very intelligent, I guess, so that's a problem, I guess, maybe. So I'm flying out and I'm looking at this, trying to figure out what to do next. So I used World Edit to move that back because it wasn't long enough for my liking. And I'm just finishing up bits of the forecastle, trying to figure out what I'm doing for the shear. So you can see where I sheared down for the final time with the yellow. And because it touches at the top, you can see where the blocks touch instead of leaving a gap. Use 2s, the longer row, until you got about the gap you want, and then you go to the row of 2s. So you go 3s until you got a gap you like, and then you go rows of 2s. And yeah, this graphical error is really becoming a problem here. I'm sorry about that. If you want me to, I can re-record this, although I really don't want to. But if it's a big problem for you guys, I can. Although I will show, here's the forward view again, and here I'm building the side of the ship down, making the shape of the side of the ship in the middle. While I do this, if you want me to re-record, I will. Not that I want to, but you will see the finished bit in a minute anyway, so you can see what got messed up with the graphical error. And I try to keep my eye on these graphical errors now for the rest of this video. After I've seen that, I've been looking over at the player POV, so you'll see a lot more cuts now, because that's me checking the player POV to make sure that there aren't any graphics. The way I recorded this is I have a secondary account on in spectator mode, and I'm recording that account's perspective. So yeah, and you see where the curves are really pronounced now, and this should be the last row of the forecastle deck. and we are just going down. And you can see how I'm shallowing out the angles at the bottom now, in a way, but they're long at the bottom. So that's fine. Some ships have it long, other ships have a more stubby, rounded bow. For example, the Aquitania has a real long pointed bow. Well, the Olympic class is kind of stubby, kind of not. Not all bows are going to be the same. Like a modern cruise ship bow does follow this system, but instead of starting perfectly flat almost at the very tip, it starts on an angle already, and it just gets more and more angled on the way back. Same for a 1930 style bow, except it starts more raked on an angle, and you still get this more angled as you go back. And then eventually you're going to want to start shallowing it out. You can see a graphical error again. I believe I catch that. Did I catch that? Yes. So, you see there, I cut it because I didn't want to, I just wanted to skip ahead to this part pretty much. And you can see where I'm shallowing it out now. You've seen the past few rows, I just cut it ahead so this doesn't go on forever. You see how it starts to shallow out, and this is the last row, and I have it shallowed out pretty good. You can shallow it out even more if you like. I wanted to, but the way the Olympic class's bow is, it would have been very hard to do, so I decided not to do that. And this is the last row. You can see I'm connecting these rows up with the little shape of the hull we made in the center there. And there you go. That is your hull. I'm going and making adjustments as I see fit, because now's the time to do that, and I was pretty happy with it for the most part, so that looks way better now. You see how it doesn't just go flat, and this is your front point of view, so you got that nice curve, and it looks really good, just like a ship. So, yeah, I guess we'll get back to the player POV, and I will talk about the stern then, so here it is. So, that's our bow. It looks good. I'll meet you back at player POV. Alright, welcome back to player POV. And to recap what we did in the time lapse, or what I was trying to explain in the time lapse, basically, with the skeleton, as I call it, of your bow here, you want to kind of start on this sort of shallow angle, and then you want it to get steeper as it goes back, and then eventually you kind of want to start making this like hook shape, except it doesn't go down. This sort of hook shape. And you want to make that get progressively bigger each row. And the way you do this is, you want each row at the waterline, this is a terrible example, to be about even as you can make it. A block off, no big deal, but try to make it even. So, you kind of guess how many rows of the steeper ones you need before you go to the shallow. So, for example, on this row, I go to the rows of 3 down here, but then this row, I go start the rows of 3s way further back, because I need to make that space so it lines up at the water line, and you can see it gets progressively more back until these rows of 3 disappear completely, and you just have the rows of 2. But the rows of 3s come up here, so you can see it starts with 1, and then we got 2, and then 3, and then this one we needed 6, 5, and then, I'm not counting that, and then I started with rows of 4, and you kind of want this to get more progressively steep as you go back, until you reach about this point. You want to start shallowing it out near the very back. So you can see how I shallowed it out pretty good here, and that's basically how you make the shape. If you have a raised forecastle like the Olympic class, you're also going to want to have your rows of like 4, for example, shallow out back into rows of 2, because it gives you that forecastle deck shape. I see a mistake where a lot of people don't do this, so they'll have to like row a 4s and it'll be really steep and go down rather than going up and shallowing out. It's not that big of a deal, but if you want to go for the most realistic hull, I would go for that. So from the front on, yeah, it's not perfect for the Olympic class, but it does look like a ship's bow. If you want, you could always tear it down, start again, but I'm not interested in that. It looks good enough for me. So, that looks pretty good. And then when you get to the waterline, you want it to start out, again, shallow, but you want it to get steeper as you go back. And then, eventually, I show in the time-lapse, I build this little shape here. So I know what I want the shape of my hull to be like. And eventually, you connect these last few sections up with your shape. So you can see I end this section here a few blocks above where I would normally end it, so I could connect it up. You just build straight back by that point. And yeah, that's really all there is to it. So you want to start out shallow, let it get steeper, start a hook shape, and let that hook also get steeper as you go back, and then shallow it out again towards the back, while making the bottom get longer and longer. But you don't want to make it too long either. I might have made that mistake here. What's nice with the bottom section is you can always cut the bottom out and redo it if you're happy with the top section, but not the draft. I'm gonna leave it because I'm lazy more than anything, and it looks fine to me. So, with that, I guess next episode will work on the stern because I don't feel like doing that right now. This took maybe a little over an hour, so it didn't take long. The stern's usually a little more difficult. And the stern's a little different because with the bow, you can kind of start, whether it's a modern cruise ship or a 1930s liner. The only difference between this and the 1930s is a 1930s liner will start a bit more rake, so a bit more of an angle. It's the same principle. So like this is, for example, here how you'd find a 1930s liner start out. You just continue doing that and making it steeper as it goes back. Same for a modern cruise ship, which you'd find like this is how they go. Just make it steeper as it goes back and then shallow it out. Now, if you have to build a bulbous bow, that's a different story. That's a bit more complicated. You want to study the shape and learn how to make these shapes. It's something that takes a bit of practice, but once you get it, it's not too bad. It honestly looks more impressive than it actually is. The stern, on the other hand, is completely different on the type of ship you're building. So, for the Olympic class, you have a counter stern, or a fantail, or a clipper. Even though both of those terms are wrong, it's a counter stern. I don't get the difference either. But that's where the stern kind of curves in and then goes down. We'll have space for the central propeller, and you kind of go. And even these are different. If you have one like the Lusitania, which I'll show in a minute. Actually, I'll show now. You just go spectator because he can fly faster. Alright, just decided to cut that out. But the Lusitania stern's a little more complicated because you have this little cutout here. Honestly, the Cunard liners were so revolutionary compared to the White Star liners, but that's a different topic. This bow, though, I'm not very happy with. It's very flat, so I'll probably rebuild that. But it's not important. So you could, I build these in rows too, and then I kind of just make them line up. I'll show you when we get to the stern. For the sakes of me building the Olympic, I'm going to show you how to make a counter stern, but the more simple type like the Olympic class has, because this type where the Lusitania, it kind of goes in and then down and then back up and then down again. We'll get to that later, so yeah. Hey, it's the ship from the thumbnail. So let me get back to the Olympic and we'll end it. Alright, so we're back at the Olympic. In the next episode, it'll probably be a shorter one just like this. I'm gonna do the same thing. And we're just gonna do the rows probably in the form of a time-lapse if it works out well for this. And that'll be that. Why'd they do it like that? That looks terrible. Okay, I'll fix that later. So I guess thanks for watching. Oh, and I guess I'll explain what we do after this as well. So after we do the hull, the next episode will be filling it in and then starting the superstructure, because filling in the hull is very simple. I'll basically probably just show you how to do it, and then I'll skip the rest. I'll flip it, change the color, whatever, and then we can start doing bits of the superstructure. And then after that, it's anyone's guess. I'll probably fill in the promenade deck, and then we'll do the boat deck, and then all the details is most likely the route I'll go. That's a different story. That gets a bit more complicated with the deck plans, which we don't use for the hull. The best way to find the shape you're looking for, which I didn't, I just freestyled it because I was bored. If you really care about getting it perfectly pristine, try to find a picture of the front of the ship and try to copy it as best you can. I've already had hulls where I've done it twice, 3 times. You could always come in and make changes. I did it here on this row, I believe, in a time lapse. I might even do this row here, because actually this row, yeah, I don't know, but thank you for watching, and I guess I will see you in part 3, so see you then.